the Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. It's Sunday noon and it's been a heck of a few days. We've got lots to talk about. The election's nearly over, or 24 hours or something, and it'll be done. So we've got that to talk about. Lots been happening in that. I'm still here in good old Poland, and my friends are scattered all over the world. So let's get them in here and let's get started. It's Name 'em and Shame 'em Day. And of course, if we're going to talk about name and shame 'em, let's bring in Phil first from there in North Dakota.
Howdy.
Howdy, my friend. How was your rodeo? You were at a rodeo last night, I believe.
It was magic. It was that totally mental. These guys are incredible. And they're actually jumping off a horse onto a bolting bull, not quite the bull, but on a steer, and wrestling it to the ground. Then they're going on to these mad bulls and riding them. It's like Buckaroo style. It's completely, these guys are just incredible. It's madness. It was great fun.
Coming from Coatbridge, it shouldn't be too much of a shock to you. Eh?
Yeah,
it sounds like a normal night down in Barhead and they all brig in there, I tell you. So anyway, welcome, my friend. I hope you're ready for an interesting hour or so.
Yeah, let's see how it pans out.
Great stuff. And they're down in the borders, our Dr. Yvonne Ridley.
Hi, Roddy. How are you?
I'm always better when I see you, Yvonne. How are you?
Yes, great. It's the start of Ramadan, so I'm fasting at the moment.
Oh, well, I've had a huge lunch, a huge dinner, and a beautiful
I was going to say, don't have a giant sandwich in front of you.
Well, yeah. Well, I've eaten today. I'm actually struggling. I can hardly move here. Anyway, we've got a big show in front of us. And of course, we mustn't forget our dear friend, Eva, who's up there somewhere in beautiful north of our country. Whereabouts are you, Eva?
Hi, Roddy. We've been doing the NC 500, so we're now parked up in a wee place called Castletown between Thurso and John O'Groats, having just passed by Doonray and had another rage thinking about our country when you look at places like that. But lovely scenery, lots to see, lots to do, and it really is the best of Scotland up here, apart from that abomination.
Indeed. Well, just such a beautiful part of the country, but I can't think of a part of our country that isn't beautiful. Obviously, apart from the east end of Glasgow, a certain part, particular location. Yeah, that'll get us some comments. It's been a heck of a few days, Phil. I want to start because 24 hours from now, the election will be over for the leader. The question is, was the election over before it started? Because we had a rather unusual interview with Yousaf. There's a couple of things there I want to do. But Techie, can you fire up that bit where Humza's been interviewed on STV about his chances of winning?
Do you think that this could perhaps come down to second preference votes? And if it does, how do you see that working out for yourself?
Well, my strategy has been to try to get as many first preferences as possible. Obviously, have a significant lead. And interestingly, polls that have come out as recently as this week, as recently as yesterday, in fact, show that I'm favoured among SNP supporters. So that certainly gives me a level of confidence.
So, I don't know if you can get it up there, David, but I have a significant lead. No, I hope to have. I might have. I could have. I have a significant lead. Now, this is going to send off the conspiracy theorists, of which I am one. Suspicious to you, Phil?
Sadly, more than suspicious. It's this guy's an idiot. I mean, he's got 24 hours to wait, and he couldn't keep his mouth shut for another 24 hours, as if we needed any more evidence. And you could go into this, but you don't need to. If you know what's going on and how the SNP's been run, how these candidates have been treated, and the distinction between the three of them, and And even the way that you can see there's a preference now. If it's not going to be Hamza, then it's anyone but Ash for the establishment. The establishment does not want Ash. And the reason is simple. I'm looking at policies. The fact that you cannot trust the SNP at the moment under the current leadership because they're infiltrated by the establishment and they will do anything to hang on to power, these people, it disgusts me. And if Hamza wins, we continue the fight. He has to be removed. All of these people need cleared out. It's a massive rechecking, recalibration of the SNP, so that it doesn't matter to me if they get away with the cheat. We've got the brazenness to cheat again, which they probably will because they've been getting away with it for such a long time now, and put Hamza in, then the fight continues. I'm also not happy with the more I'm looking at this and the more I'm thinking about it. It can't be Kate either for me. There's no tangible plan for independence within an acceptable time frame. So no, and there's some information I've got that means I don't trust her. Sorry, Kate, but I don't trust you.
We'll come on to who should and shouldn't, the famous naming names later, and why they should go. Yvonne, his statement there, and a lot of the trolls and a lot of the I don't know what to call them, the devoted, the hangers on, whatever, have been denied. Oh, he never said that. He never said that. We've got it there. We've got his own words. We've even got a subtitle. I have a substantial lead. It stinks. It's been fixed. We were told that no one could see. There was no running totals. You can't see it. No one knows. But he also said, "Oh, there's opinion polls. We've got polls. I'm way ahead with SNP supporters." Earlier in the interview, Kate was getting interviewed and said, "Well, we don't know. There's been no polling. Someone's telling lies." I don't think it's Kate, to be honest. What do you think?
I think that Hamza must be getting inside info. I mean, they were talking specifically about first preferences. That was the context of the conversation, first preferences. And he said that's all he cared about. And that's when he said, I have a significant lead. And it's either a monumental cock-up, which he has been known to make, like, where are your men, to the Ukrainian women. And he has the sort of confidence about him in that interview that Neil Kinnock had when he lost the election. Remember, on that stage in Sheffield,
92,
he presumed that he was the winner, and he introduced his cabinet, and he was just absolutely full of himself, and it turned off the voters. So I think a lot of SNP voters who we know watch Prism will look at that and now be mystified, because nobody likes a cheat, which is what he would be if he did have inside knowledge. So I'm not calling you a cheat, Hamza. No need to speed dial your lawyer. But I would like to know why you said unequivocally, I have the lead.
It's Eva. It is. I mean, it's. I go back to the exact same as I've said there to Yvonne. It wasn't I would like to have, I think I have, I may have, I could have. He was quite categoric.
Yeah, he seemed pretty confident, but he's been very confident and at times probably a bit too arrogant ever since the campaign began. But I think what probably troubles me more than anything is the amount of flip-flopping that he's done from really day one. The most obvious is obviously in relation to the GRR bill, because he started off being utterly adamant and 100% guaranteeing that he would oppose the Section 35, and he's gradually backed down from that unequivocal position, and now he's saying he's likely to follow the legal advice. That's what he should have been saying from the beginning. But I think there are going to be some people who feel that they've been duped into giving him his support, perhaps over the heads of his opposition to the Section 35, and they're living to regret that now that they see that, in effect, he's backsliding on that. He's also had to amend promises that he's made elsewhere. Some of those promises appear as yet to be uncosted, whether that's in relation to free access to football or various other giveaways that he was proposing to offer. So I think there are concerns about what he offers and what he will actually deliver. And the longer that the campaign goes, the more that you can see his promises beginning to unravel. And I think that that unfortunate interview is just yet another instance of somebody who's really out of their depth, put forward as a continuity candidate, but floundering on a daily basis. It's most unfortunate, very embarrassing, and it leaves a bad taste.
Yeah, I think that's probably why they wanted a shortened campaign, because they knew their chosen, I can't think of the adjective, their chosen puppet would be exposed. But the thing, Phil, here is that now, after he said that, whether it was a slip of the tongue or not, or whether it was a Ruth Davidson moment, he's now called into question the credibility. The Unionists and the Unionist media are going to be calling him in. Lloyd made reference to it last week. They're going to call him out. His credibility is shot if he wins the election on Monday. He's named, whether he's won it by fair means or foul, he is. He's already a lame duck First Minister.
Yeah, and it's exactly what the Unionists want. It's exactly what the establishment want. Which, if you need any more evidence that the current SNP leadership and management has been infiltrated, I mean, there's a couple of high profile. What they usually do is, when they get into this situation, they pretend to have a clear out and a change of guard and change the face. But really, it's the same apparatus that is in operation behind, the same individuals, the same control, the individuals who they've got control over continue to pull the strings within the organisation. So yeah, we've been saying this for a while. Lloyd, it's prophetic because he knows very well about the inner workings of the current SNP and has had the courage, like so few from within the SNP of late have had, to stand up within and say, this has got to change. This has got to stop. We have to get back to the way we were. We have to be more transparent. And we know how to do it. We've been saying this for a long time in this show. We're all ex-SNP, and I still support the party, but I can't vote for it at the moment. It pains me to say it, but I can't. While they continue to do what they're doing, and the press will round on them constantly. In fact, do you know what? They probably don't even have to, because the SNP under Humza will not be pursuing independence. They'll be in the little box that they got Nicola into, and that's exactly where they want to get us again. So no, Humza's a disgrace and must not be allowed. If they by fair means of foul, as you say, if he becomes the leader, I for one will continue to fight to remove this shyster.
Yeah, I think there's another part I want to show. Yvonne, I don't know if you saw it. Earlier in the actual STV interview, there was a photograph taken, and I take it you send it up just now. Now, you know this thing of the guy on the television or on the YouTube who talks about, he pretends he's feeding lines to Boris Johnson or Joe Biden. You know that guy?
Yeah.
As if he's telling them what to say. Techie, can you put up that picture? This is from LBC. Can you stick it up? The picture of Humza. There you go. You see the nice earpiece there going in. Who's telling them what, and what are they telling them? You're a newt, Yvonne. Unfortunately, Humza wasn't.
It could be the guy next door, or the room next door, which is a great spoof of an imaginary SPAD who advises the speaker.
Yeah.
And
we've become a parody.
Sorry?
They've become a parody.
Yes. And looking at that picture, the first thing that hits me isn't the wire leading into his ear. He's looking really rough. Humza is normally sort of, Mr. Bambi eyes and his long eyelashes, and designer stubble, but he looks as though he's been dragged through a privet hedge backwards. And he's not a happy bunny. He obviously feels very uncomfortable being sandwiched by Kate and Ash. But yeah, I mean, it's, he's at a stage now in his career where every word that he speaks should be honed and crafted. And so for him to turn around and say that he was in the lead, it was really shocking. If there has been any shenanigans, I mean, unfortunately, the SNP have managed to sabotage their own election and turn it into a farce. Nobody is going to believe the outcome. Whatever happens, whoever gets elected, there will be a huge question mark over that person. And the only way they'll be able to get rid of it is by having an election, another election. And they can do it. They can take on Eva's idea by forcing an election in Holyrood.
Well, I think...
And by the way, Eva was saying that she thinks that Hunt has taken legal advice to roll back on Section 35. I don't think he's taken legal advice. We're at the start of Ramadan. I think he's taken advice from the Mosque Committee, whether he wants to or not. And I think they will have told him in no uncertain terms that this GRR is so un-Islamic, he may as well wash down a bag of pork scratchings with a whiskey, because it's just not, So I think that's where he'll be taking his advice from at the moment.
It's Eva, I mean, the fact that he looks already as if he's under pressure. And if he doesn't have an earpiece in place, it's not going to take long. I mean, it would be really annoying to watch Douglas Ross and Anna Sarwar tying him up in knots. Now, much as I'm no longer SNP, I have been all my life, it hurt me to watch them getting destroyed. But the only way this election, in my opinion, can get credibility is if the person they least want to win it, Ash Regan, is declared the winner on Monday. Then I've got to say that must have been a fair election. Because any other result, to me,
I think there's been too many things that have gone wrong.
Yeah. Do you have any faith in the result on Monday?
I think there's been too many things gone wrong in the campaign for anybody to have any great confidence in whatever is the declared result. I mean, all that the party had to do at the outset was to speak to the three candidates and their teams in private and tell them how many members they had and how many of those members were entitled to full voting rights. Had they made that information available privately, the candidates and their teams would have had confidence in the process, and a lot of the ensuing embarrassment and bad publicity and suspicion could have been avoided. So this is a set of circumstances entirely of the making of the SNP hierarchy, whether that's elected politicians or some of the staff that were in leadership positions within the party. But I think where we've got to now in relation to the campaigns of the individual candidates is that Scotland sees those who have abilities and powers and attributes and those who probably suffer from the reverse of whatever is the imposter syndrome and overconfidence in their own abilities. And that's embarrassing to see, and it's quite unnecessary, because within the Scottish body politic and within Scottish society at large, there is a substantial number of people who have abilities and skills, experience, knowledge, strategies, plans, ideas that could bring Scotland forwards and take us to independence. I mean, remember what Hamza said at day one, that Nicola Sturgeon was the smartest, most clever politician that he'd ever encountered. And if she couldn't find out the way to Scottish independence, he said neither could he. And so his plan was originally to hold a number of national assemblies so that the public of Scotland, the people who support Scottish independence, could tell him how they thought it could be achieved. Now, I can't see how that comprises leadership. You know, there's no imagination, there's no substance there. What he should have been doing is adopting the line that's always been the Alba Party line, and it's Ash Regan's line, that there is at least a constitutional convention. He's not even offering that. And the people around him who are his allies, such as Stuart MacDonald or Ben Macpherson or others of that ilk, are talking in terms of Scottish independence not being something that we should be aiming for at the moment. We should, in effect, from Ben Macpherson's perspective, be looking for more devolution, you know, like being a little bit more pregnant, if you like. Or in the eyes of Stuart MacDonald, we've not to try to seize the day or grasp the thistle or grasp the flower, because it might disintegrate in our grasp if we go too early. You know, these are people promoted beyond
Yeah, cut off in your primary, Eva. He was right. These people, Phil. I mean, the other thing is there's denial, so much denial among SNP people. I had someone who's well connected in the party saying to me today, "Oh, I didn't know about Emma Harper sending out emails, and I didn't know Liz Lloyd, Nicola Sturgeon's ex-chief of staff, was running the campaign for whom until she got caught. No, I didn't know there was a Westminster SPAD sent up. No, I didn't know that headquarters were offering the facility so everyone could record a video. No, I didn't know." And saying, well, either you didn't know, you're lying, or you're absolutely glaikit.
There are none so blind as those who refuse to see. It's willful blindness. And we've spoken extensively about this. It's that dichotomy I spoke about many times. And when I first started using the betrayal word, the potential betrayal that I feared, it was primarily around the fact that these people, and myself included, and we as members, have a loyalty that you team up. When we went down to Westminster in 2015 in the 56, we were renowned for our tightness, the way of the operation, the way we stuck together, the way we sang from the same song sheet. Why? Because we're going down there to get independence. As soon as you deviate from that path, which the SNP have since Nicola has taken over, and now we'll look to pass the baton on to another betrayer, who I believe, which I believe Hamza is, and I've got concerns about where Kate's going on this as well. Then it falls apart when you start pushing issues that are not unifying. The SNP is and always should be about gaining independence first, nothing less. Independence, nothing less. That was and always should be the mantra. To change that to something as idiotic, deliberately to deconstruct the SNP, to discombobulate, to create division, to split the SNP, it's backfired a wee bit because Alex started Alba, and that just looks like the early SNP to me. That's what the SNP should be doing. These are the policies that SNP should get back online. And it's people like Lloyd and the guys we had on earlier, like Andy Brophy, that we should be relying on to bring us back into line, Stephen and everybody. We need the SNP, the stalwarts, the old guard, the few that are still there to stand up, and enough of us need to stand up and say, no, this is what the SNP need to get back to. So it's a disgrace what's happened. Credit to the union, credit to the establishment, credit to MI5. We've said all along, what's the biggest threat to the union? It used to be the IRA, and MI5 infiltrated the IRA. Now, since the biggest threat to the union is Scottish independence, how easy is it for the establishment to infiltrate the people we currently have within the SNP, to create this division, to encourage this kind of madness to destroy women's rights through this crazy GRR bill. And let's repeat again what we've said all along. We're not against trans rights. Human beings, we need human beings to be treated respectfully. And someone going through that needs support, as do the family. And what's worked as well, I'm here in America, there's a friend of mine whose child's going through it, and I'm delighted to say it's going very well, because they're being treated by the children adapt. You know, we're good people. People, I believe, it's not quite the Hobbesian, Rousseauian issue. I'm more half and half, but there's goodness in most people. When it comes to this, especially when it's a child, we want that person to get the support, and it's what we will continue to do. We're not fighting those going through this pain. We're fighting a ridiculous bill that went too far, imposed deliberately on the ideological, to split a party and take it and divert us away from our primary concern, which is independence for our people and our nation. That must be fixed, and there's only one way to do that: the big clear out.
Yeah, I mean, the GR you saw in New Zealand this week with Posey Parker, where it goes, where the people saying, oh, we're worried, the trans people saying, oh, we're scared and worried about our life. It was the women that were stopping them even talking about their rights. And that's where we're heading if we allow that to go. But that's another discussion for another long day. Let's stick on this election, if I may, just for a short while, Yvonne. One thing that's been said is the Greens, the tail wagging the dog, who have said that if Humza doesn't get elected, e.g. if it's Kate or Ash, and one thing I should just say on what, yeah, they would veto it unless it's our Humza. Getting back to independence, Ash being the only one that's really talking about independence, but Kate as well. They won't, and people say surely not. But we saw that this week. We had last week Neil Mackay on here from All Under One Banner. And he invited everyone. The three candidates agreed, and then Humza reneged a wee bit. He flip-flopped on that as well. He would rather go down to see King Charlie VI of Gotha Coburg get his coronation rather than walk with Scottish independence supporters in Glasgow. But the Greens have said, well, we're not coming unless we don't like people that understand. We're making conditions. We're going to give you conditions who can be leader. We're going to give you conditions who can support independence. The Greens are poison to our cause, Yvonne.
Absolutely. Truly toxic. Patrick Harvey hates women. That's obvious. The woman next to him, is it Lorna Slater?
Yeah.
Who became a government minister by default. If anyone should have imposter syndrome, it should be that woman. She was hoping to sneak in on the list when she stood in the last election, but she got less than 40 votes. And it was only when somebody resigned that she was actually bumped up through the list. And so she got in to Holyrood by accident, and then crazy Nicola Sturgeon brings her up to a ministerial level. I mean, what a slap in the face to so many politicians or people who have aspirations to be politicians.
And actually won an election.
And her crazy schemes that aren't going to work. And that the two of them have got the cheek to put a gun to their heads to SNP supporters saying, if you don't vote for Humza, we're not playing. And, you know, I think it's about time that they really knew their position in the grand scheme of things. And they're not crown makers or the power behind the throne. They're not power brokers. They happen to be able to give a sizable SNP government a shoe-in, a majority when needed. I mean, when have they been needed? For the barking mad GRR bill. That's the only time they've been needed. And that GRR bill that they have pushed through as well has cost the SNP 51,000 members in the last
Couple of years.
Few years.
Since Nicola took power. And what you still can't put a lid on her. She was being interviewed the other day, you know, what next for the former First Minister. And she said GRR is still very much in her heart. So she'll be, I think that I didn't think her ego would be able to take this, but quite obviously she's going to have to be in there to continue cajoling and driving this crazy GRR bill forward.
Yeah. She's, I believe Nicola's going to start a new podcast. This is not a joke, by the way, through the BBC.
That's
and
right.
Yeah,
Well,
I think it's going to be called Chocolate Fireguard, because that's how much. Yeah. Eva, on the GRR bill, in the last couple of days, I mean, as we said, Holmes has been flipping and flopping. And I've got to say that Ash Regan, from day one, has been on the course. Constitutional Convention, unite the Yes movement, independence, the ballot box. We'll use it as a means to independence, to negotiate our independence. No more asking for independence. Once we get a vote that confirms it, we negotiate. So she stayed by it. Kate's flipped and flopped as well. She went from, you know, she wouldn't go for she wouldn't challenge the Section 35 to, oh, well, I'll see, I might challenge it, to, you know, so another flip-flopper. But Humza on Thursday, and I mean, it goes back to what I said to Phil early about delusion and living in a bubble. He stated that the GRR and gender issues increased support for the SNP. I've just got my jaw off the floor after 3 days, Eva. How about you?
Well, the GRR bill and related matters increased support for the SNP only in Hamza Yousaf's world if the word increase actually means decimates, because I suppose the horror of the full implications of the GRRB and related issues came to haunt us all when we saw the spectacle of Adam Graham alias Isla Bryson, and there are very many others who have been in the female prison estate who ought not to have been there as the result of the guidance issued by various different arms of the Scottish Government, including, obviously, the Scottish Prison Service. So what Hamza Yousaf really has got to get a grip of is the fact that the law in Scotland was actually pretty good and pretty clear. It was non-legislative guidance that caused the problem to begin with, but that would only be reinforced had the GRR bill not been halted in its tracks by Westminster. So he really, for a former Cabinet Secretary for Justice, doesn't understand the law, and he certainly doesn't understand politics if he thinks that that bill did anything other than make a laughingstock of the party, the government and the country worldwide. You know, I've said this so many times. It is embarrassing when you go and Google Scotland and what's in Scottish news, and repeatedly what was hitting the headlines was stuff that really didn't have to be there, that could have been left, that could have been dealt with much more sensibly and in a fashion that would have taken the public with them. You know, go back to the introduction of same-sex marriage. When Alex Salmond spoke about introducing same-sex marriage, legalising same-sex marriage in Scotland, there were a lot of people very much against it, and many were dead set against it. But Alec didn't make that a whipped vote. It was a matter of conscience, and it passed, rightly so, by a majority, a sizable majority, because it reflected the will, the understanding, the feelings, the sentiments, the views, the beliefs of the majority of the people of this country, who are primarily democratic and we like social justice. The Gender Recognition Reform Bill is not supported because of the very negative implications and impact and effect that it has, especially on the rights of women and girls, as seen so horribly yesterday in New Zealand, where something similar is in place. So I think that any leader of any party in Scotland today has got to be aware of the feelings, the sensitivities, the needs and the rights of women and girls. We're talking about single sex, same sex, protections, rights, duties, responsibilities, and these are all things that women and girls need for all the reasons that have been, you know, spelled out so very, very plainly for such a long period of time. And it would ill behove a male leader of Scotland to fail to take account of those feelings and those rights. And, you know, Kate Forbes too should stop the flip-flopping. And really, she didn't come to Holyrood to vote against the bill because she was on maternity leave, but she should certainly make her position far more clear now and come out either for it or against it, because in the book of anybody sensible, the GRR bill should be parked. We should go back to fighting Westminster on the Constitution in relation to matters including independence and the enhancement of Scottish interests, not the debasement of the Scottish interests, which is what this does.
I'll come to you in a second, Phil. I want to change topic slightly, but before we leave this topic, Yvonne, on her departure speech on the last day in Holyrood, the Blessed Nicola made an apology to women in the 60s and 70s who had been single mothers, who had been forced to give up their babies. And she was very sincere and so caring and whatnot. I was immediately struck in thinking that a future First Minister is going to have to go up and apologise to young girls who were coerced into having double mastectomies and taking puberty blockers, and young men who have had their penises and testicles chopped off. Some First Ministers in the not too distant future will have to apologise for that, will they not? You're in mute. You're muted, Yvonne. You're muted. It'd be easier getting rid of the dog.
Yeah, I've just finished reading the Hannah Barnes book on the collapse of the Tavistock Clinic, and it makes grim reading. It's very, very well researched, and I do think that in years to come, there'll be a Prism maybe 20, 30 years down the line. And and the discussion will be, how on earth did that happen? You know, in the same way that we say, how did nuns take babies from single mums and bump them off to Australia? How did that happen? And in a few years' time, especially with this Tavistock Clinic findings that involved thousands of young people, people are going to say, how on earth did they allow this to happen? There's a tragic case of a young girl who was pushed down this puberty blocker route because she was persuaded by the staff there that she was in the wrong body because she felt attracted to other women. The poor kid wasn't in the wrong body at all. She was a lesbian. And instead, she's been pushed down this route, gone through this extreme form of surgery. She'll be on medication for the rest of her life. She'd probably end up with osteoporosis, which is a side effect of the puberty blockers. Her longevity has dropped by about 20 years. And Nicola Flaming Sturgeon is promoting this. The woman is addled in the brain. She's gone gaga. That's all I can say. It works for some people, and good for them. And if they're happy, I'm happy. I want everybody to be happy, but I don't want one group of people to be happy at the expense of another group. And you know, in the Alba party, we're in the process of pulling together a charter of women's rights. Oh, and that's another thing. Flaming Humza Yousaf has nicked that idea. I don't know about Eva, but I was, when I heard him say that he was going to come up with a charter for women's rights, I thought, where the hell did he get that idea from? And
Eva.
And I think that, yes, but I also think that not only does Humza sit watching Prism for ideas, he goes onto the Alba Party website and looks at, we've got a whole section on women and equality, which is Eva and I's sort of thing. And it's there's so much there to make us angry, but from the positives that I see, people have said that if they don't get the leader that they want, they will suspect there's been some jiggery-pokery. And that will be good news for Alba, because I suspect that quite a few people may jump ship and go to Alba. And at least the one thing that we can guarantee in Alba is that we're independents through and through, because the boss, Alex Salmond, is independence through and through. And I know that because I spent this morning soaking in the bath listening to one of his speeches from 1998. He looked quite svelte back then. And he was introduced onto this stage by Winnie Ewing at the SNP conference. And, you know, looking at all of those hopeful faces, many of them will be dead now, but there'll be others that are maybe do have one foot in the grave, and they'll be wondering, what happened to the dream? What have they done? And the SNP meeting, I mean, I saw one empty seat. It was rammed packed. It was so inspiring to hear Alex talk, but he never took anything for granted either. He never said, when I am this, or I am a clear winner, or anything like that. But he did talk in a very inspiring way about independence.
Yeah, he's still got it. For on what Eva's talking, and Yvonne was talking about there, about Humza watching this show and stealing our ideas. When Nicola was resigning on her last day on Friday, she listed her achievements like abolishing prescription charges. You were the health secretary, that was actually Alex Salmond's government. The Queen's Ferry crossing, yeah, that was Alex Salmond's government. It's the void of policies, and that's after 9 years. She inherited 4 huge, the M74, the Queen's Ferry, and a couple other heavy
infrastructure.
There's none. Whoever takes over on Monday, there is nothing to take over. There is no policies.
The baby box.
Well, there's the baby box, yeah. That's, in fact, the baby box, even that, I know it's a bugbear, but even that wasn't a full policy. That was just one part of a policy that Finland do. There's been no policies for 9 years. We need a refreshment, and that's why we need a clear out, Phil, do we not?
100%.
How's that for a segue, mate?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so much going on in this world just now that this is why Alex had all of these initiatives. They were to get us to show that we are capable of performing, and that we want to be on the world stage. We deserve to be on the world stage, and there's so much going on in the world that we should be talking about. But yeah, the big clear out is essentially required, and I take it from that you're talking about. Shall we go through it just now?
Well, we can maybe just leave it till just at the end if you want.
Yeah, let's do that. I mean, I think there's so much going on in the world just now. It's like we're rightly wrapped up in what's going on in Scotland because it affects us immediately. But Scotland within the world, and what's our vision? We with Alex and people of that ilk, we have people with vision of Scotland in this world, taking our rightful place and being respected. These idiots, these people that we've currently got are a joke. They're a disgrace. No one will take them seriously. They're just another puppet of the British establishment and the globalist establishment. So no, I'm raging with what's going on just now. There's, you look at the French riots, you look at multipolarity in the world and the changes that are coming. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but it's staggering how badly Nicola's cabal have performed, and it's the only reasonable explanation is a deliberate deconstruct of the SNP by those who would wish us harm.
There's a fact, Eva, if there is some kind of modicum of honesty in this poll. I wrote a blog and I stand by it today, and I'll say it again. I don't believe unless Humza gets enough votes in the first round that he'll become First Minister and leader of the SNP. Because I would imagine that those who vote for Ash Regan, their second preference will go to Kate, and those who are going to vote for Kate, I would imagine their second preference will go to Ash. And I think he will lose out on the second votes. So if Kate gets in, we've heard that there are certain members of the SNP who will not support her leadership, who will not vote for her as First Minister. But what happens to all the people who come out so strong for Humza? The party is going to be split, whatever the result is on Monday. The SNP is split asunder at the moment, is it not?
I am afraid that if Humza wins, there will be a serious lack of ability, experience and intellect in whatever cabinet secretaries he appoints. I mean, I shudder to think about it, quite frankly. If either Kate or Ash wins, yes, there will be split. But I hope that the three contenders collectively can see what I see as Matt and I go about Scotland in our van. I'm going to say the F word actually, ferries. We were in Uig on Skye, and the Uig ferry terminal is being redeveloped, and somehow it's behind issues about ferries not being able to go from Uig over to the Western Isles. But another issue in relation to ferries is a very important one. Why does the east coast of Scotland still not have its own ferry travelling to and from Europe? There is no excuse for that now. We had it a few years ago from Rosyth. It stopped, it moved, and we know that Douglas Chapman and others have been working to get that reinstated. But instead of doing something constructive like that, what we've got is people like Angus Robertson, Stuart MacDonald, talking about how an independent Scotland will rejoin the EU. These guys can't even get us a ferry to mainland Europe, for goodness sake. So I really think that whether or not there's a split in the SNP, what there has to be is a very serious look at what are we trying to do in Scotland, by Scotland, for the people of Scotland? Because we need a government that is radical, that looks at the problems, looks at the issues and finds the solutions, instead of digging deeper and deeper holes in the context of Ferguson Marine and everything that's gone on there, or the deposit return scheme, which is just yet another waste of money because it's been done so very badly. And I really shudder again and I fear what lies ahead for Scotland if we're going to continue to have politicians who don't have life experience and don't have work experience. You know, I listened with, I suppose, a bit of a smirk on my face, but I was more or less in tears at some of the speeches that were made thanking the First Minister for her contribution to Scotland and her contribution to the women of Scotland. What the hell has she done for the women of Scotland? There are, you know, pensioners, the vast majority of whom are women, losing out on their pensions, losing out on, you know, being able to have a decent standard of living because we don't have independence with a pension paid at the right rate. It's the lowest in Europe, really, to speak of. We have got pensioners worrying themselves sick about fuel bills and the cost of living crisis. We've got, in terms of women, single working women, whether they're carers or nurses, home carers and the like, that graft all week and they get to the weekend and they're skint and there's no money left to cover all the bills, let alone something, nice wee extra reward for having grafted all week, as I said. You've got other issues to do with women's health that have been badly neglected. There was an announcement a couple of years ago that there was going to be a women's health SAR. It took 18 months for that woman to be appointed. For goodness sake, that's not priority. That's lip service. So, there's a lot that's got to be solved in Scotland, a lot to be corrected, but I really pray that whoever is the new leader and new First Minister has got the gumption and the courage to surround himself and herself by people who know what they're doing, not puppets, not yes men and yes women, not unqualified, wet behind the ears newbies, but people of real substance with proven track records and abilities, because by goodness, that's what this country needs now, probably, more than it has for a long time. A real change is needed, and it's got to happen quickly.
Talking of things changing, Yvonne, we had, and something as Phil's been saying, I'm going to broaden it out over the world. The World Athletics Association came out this week with a fantastic piece of news that transgender athletes will not be able to compete in women's events. Anyone that's been through puberty will not be able to. Of course, it's caused outcry by the usual suspects, but it seems that the tide is maybe beginning to turn.
Very, very slowly, but yes, I think it is. That news was delivered by Lord Coe, and so many parents will be relieved that justice has been served, because all these young girls training so hard and dedicating themselves to go for Olympic standards, only to be outrun, outswam by some bloke who's declared himself to be a woman. It's that was good news. But last week, about 2,500 people marched on the 20th anniversary of the US invasion and occupation of Iraq, which we know was facilitated by the poodle in Westminster, Tony Blair. But the anti-war marchers also called for an end to the US-NATO proxy war in Ukraine, which I found very interesting because it's something that's not talked about in the media at all. But we are very much in danger of heading towards a world war.
Yeah.
And having somebody like Hamza Yousaf in as First Minister, I dread to think of how many of our people in Scotland will be sacrificed like cannon fodder, just as they were in the Iraq War. And I really worry about the way that the media is whipping up this this whole business of Putin being the war criminal and the demonization of all things Russian. My daughter sent me some pictures through WhatsApp the other day from Japan, and she was visiting Hiroshima. And she isn't really, although I took her on plenty of anti-war marches, she never really became an activist. And she just said, I'm really afraid, having learned what happened at Hiroshima, I'm really afraid that this is going to happen in Ukraine, that nuclear weapons are going to be deployed. And of course, we have to think long and hard about this. When I first joined the SNP, had a car sticker, "Bans, not bombs." And Hamza Yousaf, you know, yes, I'm going to be marching with the refugees. And then somebody's clicked their fingers and said, King Charles, and he's gone, oh, yes. And he's gone running off to the power. That's what he's seduced by. He's not bothered about the humanity side of things. I would have been singing his praises today if he turned round and told the palace to sod off, because he was marching with real people and going to, you know, talk about refugees instead of royals. And and I just think we really cannot afford to take our eye off the ball with Hamza, because he will become manipulated by the powers that be in Westminster, especially the NATO side of things, and especially the nuclear side of things.
Yeah.
And
you're right. What gets me is that if we remember there, and I marched when there was 1 million people marching in London against the Iraq war. This war that's going on in Ukraine, which is Phil 10 times worse and more dangerous than the Iraq war, to the whole global war. There is no interest in. I mean, there was a couple of thousand people, you know, marching as Yvonne's talking about, but we're now talking about sending depleted uranium ammunition. Now, what maybe some of our viewers don't know is that Ukraine is the breadbasket of the world. During the Second World War, the Germans were loading carts, the what do you call it? These trucks,
railway carts,
with soil, with Ukrainian soil, and it goes about 20 feet deep as well. It's some of the richest soil in the world, and that's why there's a grain deal. Now we're talking about firing in depleted uranium into that soil, because it's not going to do any good. Because what I've said from the outset, I'm opposed to wars. I'm like Yvonne, I'm against all wars. But I did say the Ukrainians can never win this. They won't beat the Russians. It's like expecting Mexico to beat the US. No matter how brave they are, stop this war and don't start sending bloody nuclear, you know, uranium depleted ammunition, because that just gives the Russians the excuse to open up.
It's appalling. It's all about money and power. That's why this is happening. Understand, it's the big food corporations that want to feed you. It's the big pharma that want to get you addicted to whatever they're selling. It's the big insurance companies, the big the hedge funds, the banks that want you continually tied to them. And so this is about power. Let's make no bones about it. We shouldn't be doing this. We should not be aggravating this war. We're assisting in the destruction of a country and its people in a proxy economic war against Russia. And that is the disgrace. I mean, and we're losing it. Not just we, the people, are always going to lose, because we never win from war for this type of thing. It's the rich and the military-industrial complex that make it. And how are we losing this? Well, the SWIFT system, 10 years ago, America threatened to take the SWIFT system away from the Russians. They put SPFS in place and the Chinese did SIPs. They're both compatible. They're both up and running now. You know, and we're now facing a multipolarity. This is the change that's coming and how it affects Scotland should terrify the establishment. I'm all for it. Do we want competition? Listen to Michael Hudson on this. Check some of his YouTube when he explains the difference between financial capitalism and industrial capitalism. I'm a bit of a socialist and an industrial capitalist. I'm not a financial capitalist. And this multipolarity that's coming in, the BRICS plus, it's more than 12. We're now looking at Argentina, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Senegal, Nigeria, Algeria, Egypt, Saudi, Iran, Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, United Arab Emirates, Thailand, Indonesia, and probably Myanmar will join. This entity that the establishment fear, and it's why we're fighting in Europe, because Britain and the West want to keep control of all of the people and the industry and the business and the petrodollar that they currently control. This new entity, BRICS plus 12, will create an entity with a GDP 30% greater than America, have over half of the world's population, and control 60% of the gas reserves in the world. That's why we're fighting the war in Russia. This is about greed. Sergei Lavrov, the brilliant Russian foreign minister, says over a dozen countries have applied. Watch the new Silk Road unfold over land and sea. And we should get Alf Baird to tell us about how that's working out. And listen to somebody like Michael Hudson, who's absolutely brilliant on this. No, this is about money. This is about power. And these are strong forces, and they currently manipulate and control the Scottish government, or the Scottish government that's just almost exited. We need to get the rest of them out now.
Yep, I'm going to let this run on a bit longer, this programme this week. Techie just put up there, I think Indonesia is another one who are now pulling out of there. They're going to get rid of the Visa and the cards and the Access card, MasterCard, and switch over to the Chinese-Russian one. You're right, it's happening. I want to come back to you in a minute, Phil, about we need changes to SNP and who's got to go and who's going to stay. But Eva, the other one this week, big news, which affects us and we should be watching. Our Yvonne's always saying, get angry, get mad, we're not angry enough. Now, I'm a Francophile, I have to admit. I love the French, I always have. It's apart from English, it's my other language for that. I'm not fluent, but I love France. I love French wines. I love French food. I love everything but French they've got. But they were getting their pension age raised by 2 years, and they're going tonto. Now, they're in the country in France, the government are scared of the people, not the people scared of the government. We need to get our government in Edinburgh and in Westminster scared of us.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head once more, Roddy, haven't you? I would never have expected a Tory government in Westminster to have any respect for the general population at all. But what we've seen in recent years in Scotland, unfortunately, has been that over and over again, the Scottish government has not paid anything more than lip service to the interests or the desires of the people of Scotland. That is seen most starkly in the delivery of mandate after mandate after mandate for independence, and where we've had a series of promises that were made and promises that were reneged on, whether that's been the 11-point plan provided by Mike Russell, or it was the promise of referendum day on the 19th of October this year, or it was the other innovations that various different policy makers or policy chiefs were to be in charge of, or even my own MSP, Keith Brown, when he was the man for the Constitution. So really, since the 2015 election, right up until now, the core belief of the majority of the people of Scotland has been that there would have been a drive towards a real independence campaign. It hasn't happened. And I think the only reason that you're hearing independence in the news at all now is because of the Alba Party. We're the ones who are talking all the time about Scottish independence and giving the lines to the SNP if they want to use them. So I do not condone violence. I do not condone setting alight town halls or cars, buses, vehicles, whatever the hell else it was. But I was really heartened to see in some parts of France that there were public employees, including firemen and policemen, who were supporting the protesters, because the protest isn't just about raising the pension age, it's also because the French are scunnered with the cost of living issue there and some energy price rises there, although they should think themselves lucky in comparison to what we're going through here. Mm-hmm. You know, you talk about don't get mad, get even. If the people of Scotland don't get even, it'll only prove that they are mad and that we are too wee, too poor and too stupid to deserve independence. So I think the people of Scotland need to get angry and need to be saying to the Scottish government, get the finger out and get the job done. And getting the job done means implementing all those mandates, and it means making the 19th of October this year decision day. That's what we were promised. That's what we should have. Couple that with the Constitutional Convention, add in international support, international action, and let's have some disobedience in Westminster. Let's see Ian Blackford actually stand up and walk out one day for the right reasons. Let's see Stephen Flynn follow him out. Let's see all of those other SNP seat warmers, which is what they've been in the main, get up, find their courage, take it in both hands and show Westminster, show Scotland that Scotland means business.
I agree. I mean, I'm an abstentionist. I wouldn't have any MPs in there, as you know. An argument I lost at conference. And I accept it because I'm a Democrat, but I wouldn't have anyone down there. Yvonne, I wrote in my blog this week, I always like to punt the blog, get a few more readers. And I said, what the SNP should be aware of, irrespective of who gets in, that they should remember what happened to the Labour Party. The Scottish people are very slow to rouse, but once they make up their mind, you're not going to stop them. And whether that be for independence or whatever. But the SNP should be aware that if they don't start listening, and as Eve is saying, paying attention to what we're talking about, things that we want to see land reform, we want to see pensions, we want to see a mandate for independence, we want to see our pensioners getting help, we want to see proper things happening, not men in frocks. They better start listening.
Absolutely. I mean, my biggest fear is that if people turn away from the SNP, they might turn away from the independence movement altogether, which would be an absolute tragedy. I've never quite understood why Anna Sarwar doesn't allow a Labour for Independence branch.
Because he's a Brit.
Because he's what?
He's a Brit.
Well, yeah, this, it's he's very much like Humza. As soon as he sees the call of power, he's answering to it straight away. You mentioned depleted uranium before, and I remember going to Basra ahead of the Iraq War in 2003, and they'd had depleted uranium from the first Gulf War. And I went round the maternity wards in Basra, and the first question a mother asked when our baby was born, it wasn't, have I got a boy or a girl? It was, is my baby normal? Because some of the babies that were being born had Frankenstein-style features, spines growing out of their body instead of being encased in the body, one eye, three eyes. It was just a real nightmare. And this was because of depleted uranium. And the Ministry of Defence was in total denial.
Of course.
About it. Not because of the Iraqi people, because they don't care who they drop bombs on, but because of the British soldiers.
Yeah.
Because they were having this Gulf War syndrome.
Gulf War syndrome.
And some of them were having children that were having similar deformities to the babies in Basra. And don't forget, Basra was also the place where Rose Gentle's son, Gordon, a 19-year-old lad from Pollock, was killed in 2004 by a roadside bomb. And she, I don't know if she's still a member of Military Families Against the War, but these governments use our children like cannon fodder.
Well, yeah.
And they don't care what poisons they're being infected with going to war. There's just no care at all. And this was mentioned again by Brian Fox, who's very much, shut up, Bertie.
You want to use some depleted uranium in that, Doug?
And there's Brian Cox, who's just finished filming this excellent series, Succession. And he said, the reason why it's such a hit, it's all glamour and money and lifestyle. And he said, if you notice in the script, it's all about the people on the executive floor. There's nothing about the people below because they just simply don't count.
Yeah.
They don't care. And so Eva's right. We've got to get angry. And I wouldn't bother even soiling myself down to Westminster. I would stay in Scotland and get angry in Scotland, block the roads, block all the trade routes, get the unions on board, have a general strike, and just turn the tap off, literally, because they're getting our energy, our gas.
The bypassers, Kenny McCaskill's talked about that. They've taken the pipe and bypasses so we can't turn off the tap, the bastards.
Well, and just cut them off, everybody off, and just, you know, if we go through some hardship, so what? Look at what the Ukrainians are going through at the moment. Look at what the Africans are going through. The people who are desperate, trying to get to this country in a boat that shouldn't be on a duck pond, never mind on the channel. So we do need to get angry. We do need to mobilise. We do need revolution in Scotland, and people need to wake up.
We do. Phil, we have overrun already, but I want to go on because we have promised the people. We've looked at it and chatted about it offline, often, all of us. And whoever goes in, they've all said, and I mean, suddenly Humza said at the last minute, of course, when part of his flip-flopping, that he was going to reorganise HQ. Now, I don't want to go through names. Well, we got rid of the Chief Executive Officer, Murrell. Good. There's a few more there that need to go. Starting with Lorna Flynn, the Secretary. Colin Beattie, the Treasurer, the man who helped signed off the 633,000. That's just two of them. You know, your others that you think should go that would make us better?
100%. I mean, and why? This is not about revenge or bitterness. This is pragmatism. You know, just touching on a couple of things we've talked about today. Where are the voices within SNP that are standing up and saying, you know, the announcement from World Athletics is a small start, but what they're saying, the athletes who have gone through male puberty cannot compete with women. It's a good start, but not good enough. What's the SNP MPs that are saying no biological males should compete? It's that simple. Where's that strength? Where's that conviction? You know, and the issues that we face, the French are up in arms. They're changing it from 62 to 64. Well, our rate is 66 at the minute. Retirement age has gone up to 68 as early as 2035. Where are the voices with the SNP that are standing up for us that want independence? Stop this populism. We know who you are, and do you know what we should start with? The 7 who voted against GRR, these are the only people who are safe, in my opinion. The people who had the courage to stand up for what the people of Scotland want. And that means everybody else is under question. And notice, I want these removed from positions of power. And I'm going to go through the list of names. This is a red card for you from power. You know, there might be some yellow cards in there if the explanation is satisfactory, but I doubt it. You know, Angus Robertson, you took away the NEC, the power of the people, and you handed the power in the SNP and decision making to those who manipulate and currently control the SNP leadership. Not good enough, Angus. On your bike, Humza, Nicola, Shirley Ann Somerville, John Swinney, Kevin Stewart, Keith Brown, Tom Arthur, Ben McPherson, Karen Adam, Emma Roddick, James Dornan, Gavin Newlands, Chris Law, Neil Gray, David Linden, Annam Kaiser, Stephen Flynn, Richard Thompson, Tommy Shepherd, all who support Humza, effectively. Stuart MacDonald, Alan Smith, John Nicholson, Mike Russell, Shona Robinson, Lorna Flynn, you've mentioned earlier. Colin Beattie is a nice man. There's a lot of good people. There's a lot of people here I would consider are very likeable and decent people. But if you don't have the gumption to stand up and do what the people of Scotland want, not good enough. Pete Wisher, Mary Black, Mary Hunter, Kirsten Oswald, pretty much the entire NEC when you think about it. Kirsty Blackman, Hannah Bardell, all the Wokarati, the GRR committee that betrayed women, Joe Fitzpatrick, Fulk McGregor, Cowcub Stewart, are ones I haven't mentioned before, all selected using quotas. We believe in Scotland in the equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. That's a nonsense. And most of us are Anyone with any sense wants equal opportunities. There's others, but I would actually add Kate Forbes. I'm afraid, Kate, where's your credibility and where's your plan to take us to independence? The only one I see is Ash Reagan. And you add to that Anne McLaughlin, Alison Thulis, and Ian Blackford, people I got on well with, Patrick Grady, Deirdre Brock, in truth, most MSPs, but certainly all who have gone along with Nicola's betrayal of the people of Scotland, all who voted for GRR, that's most of the MSPs. They better explain. You better have a damn good explanation as to why you did that, because the default position is not good enough. So game on for challenging all of these positions. All of these people. Sorry?
Can they be deselected?
You can. If the power is with the people. The people, the members can challenge. Once we wrestle control of the NEC away, we need to re-empower the branches and make it worthwhile again. And let's get the communication going again. Let's talk to each other. Let's rebuild the party from the ground up. We're the people that built this party. It's been stolen from us. We need to take it back through force of will. And we need to ask all of these people, all of them, what do you really think about GRR? Don't give me a populist answer. What do you think? You're currently in the position of power, and if you want to remain there or you want to have another crack at this, because you're all going to be challenged. How do we gain independence and when? What's your position in GRR? And notice the distinction with us. We're not expelling anyone. I don't want anyone expelled like many of us have been. Why? Because we're not deplatforming. We believe in democracy. But you better have a bloody good answer, or you're getting busted down to Lance Corporal. The only ones I would expel would people who perhaps might be found guilty of a criminal offence, which might be the Murrells. But time will tell.
And on that note, folks, you really can't top that. I think I have to end our discussion, regrettably. Thank you for being here. And we'll be back soon. Love to hear your comments, folks. And until just quick note, on Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll be putting out a midweek special on Luke Mitchell. There's been some updates. A lot of you I know watched my first interview I had with Scott Forbes on that, appalling condition for that young laddie. So I've got an update with him and Sandra Lean, and I'll be recording that on Monday. And we'll be getting out once it's all edited and everything, hopefully Tuesday or Wednesday. But until we all see you again, take care now.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.